Good afternoon, everybody. Right, got a couple of minutes. Glad you're here. My name is Daryl Stevens. I'm the Chief Financial Officer here at Great Falls College MSU. And more importantly, I am from Medicine. Many of you have been here before. We're very, very glad that you're here. My wife is making me do two shameless plugs before we get started. Next Thursday night, which is December the 7th, we'll have our choir concert here. Great Falls College Community Choir and also the Great Falls College Children's Choir are both performing that night. The next night, many of you know our friend Sam Cron, who is an adjunct instructor here. And Sam has the I don't know, what do they call it?
Montana Improvisers Orchestra.
Montana Improvisers Orchestra. And they're going to do a concert at 7 o'clock the next night, which is Friday night. Okay, so those are two things. 7 o'clock. Both, we're trying to keep it simple. 7 o'clock for both of those things. So, and I'll do a plug myself. Last night was the very first student and faculty music recital at Great Falls College. And it was fantastic. It was really, really wonderful. So, but we're not here for that. We're here to hear Grant because he is wonderful and he does a great job with this. And, set you up with right? And y'all all know that we have a wonderful concert coming up and Grant's going to tell us all about it. So, Grant Harville.
Hi everyone, thank you Daryl. Yes, we do. In fact, it's Sunday afternoon at 3. It's our holiday performance and it'll feature a variety of tunes you all know and things like that. I want to focus on two of the bigger pieces that we're going to be playing on the program, both written by Americans, both written by Pulitzer Prize winners. The first one is by Christopher Rouse. Christopher Rouse, born in 1949. As I said, won a Pulitzer Prize in 1993 for his trombone concerto, and very successful, I guess you would say. Gets lots of commissions, especially from orchestras, writes a ton of orchestral music. Has taught at some of the most prestigious composition programs in the country, Juilliard, Eastman, Michigan, places like that. So he's doing just fine for himself. And as I say, he's got writes a lot of music for orchestra. So why don't we get just a little bit of taste of the Christopher Rouse style. This is a piece, an orchestral piece called Gorgon, based on the 3 Gorgon sisters from Greek mythology. And it's a little bit of movement 1 called Sthena. That is, of course, exactly what we'll be playing on a Christmas concert. Yeah. Obviously not. But that's a good taste of his style. In the interest of full disclosure, he's one of my favorite composers on earth. But of course, it's not exactly appropriate for the kind of program that we'll be doing on Sunday. The piece that we'll be playing is called Karolyu. He wrote it in 1989, or he sort of finished it in 1989. And it's actually inspired by Carmina Burana, which is a piece that all of you know, whether you know it or not. If you've ever heard or seen something where they need to convey epic impending doom, then they play the music from Carmina Burana. What is Carmina Burana? It's this sort of cantata, gigantic piece with big orchestra and singers. And it's based on old texts, medieval texts of a couple of different languages, medieval German. It's also got some Latin, like the O Fortuna beginning. And if you're in a music appreciation course, you know that there's a fancy word for a composition that has more than one language in it. Maybe you don't. If you are, you don't know, I blame Cindy. That's okay. It's called macaronic if you have more than one language in the same piece. And Carmina Burana does. It's got this sort of highbrow, lowbrow combination of stuff. So let's listen to a little bit of the opening of Carmina Burana, the O Fortuna. What you hear is big fanfare, lots of Latin, and then a big fanfare at the end. at some point I'll point in the air, and that's when the big trumpet lick happens. And I want you to listen for it. Just, it'll be relevant. Stuff that happens at the end. So now for the opening of Carl You, Rouse wants to do the exact same thing except we're in Happy Christmas Carol land. So we'll get this fanfare to start, you'll hear a bunch of Latin text, and then you'll get this fanfare which is totally lifted right from Carmina Burana. They did this here, what, a couple years ago?
Yeah. Was it last year? 2 years. So it's the same kind of structure to that as the opening of Carmina Burana, just again, the affect is completely different. So the way I describe the Rouse piece is that it's Christmas carols of an alternate universe. And what I mean by that is that he's written, it's a batch of them. Each one is in a different language, and it's sort of in the style of a folk carol of those different countries. So after the Latin one, we get a Swedish one, we get a French one, we get a Czech one, we get a Russian one, we get a Spanish one. But it's important to know that even though they sort of sound like they could be traditional carols, they're not. All of the melodies are original by him, and all of the language is nonsense. And when I say that, if you know the language, you might catch a word here and there, but they mean absolutely nothing. And so it's this weird kind of spirit of a Christmas carol without actually being a carol in terms of the melody or the words. So any Spanish speakers in the room? Not really? Okay, then you won't be really offended by the language in the Spanish. Just for the women.
So you get a sense, it isn't, of course, a Christmas carol, but it kind of sounds like it could be. I don't know how many of you go to sort of holiday choral concerts. I've been to a billion of them. But I can just sort of imagine, a conductor standing up before that piece and saying, this is a traditional carol of Seville, where about an ode to Mary or something like that, and then they sing that. Again, the words don't mean any of that, but it's the spirit of it rather than the actual text. So just to get a sense of how much the text makes no sense, here's what the German text means. And again, some of the words are not real. The grammar is awful, so it's actually kind of hard to translate, but it goes something like this. Oh, the room, thank you, old flock, live, thank, as beauty morning drank, always too much Viennese to fake word, crumb is hall, crumb is holy strength, fake word, time a marriage to fall out, always too much Viennese to fake word, strong one day father is fake word, gave us all to stir spring of peace own bride, yes, yes, everyone creature band, brother, ha 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 ha, everyone pays heart, but beat nevertheless experienced over on often from clap.
How many syllables he needed or something?
Well, it's interesting. Now, the bizarre part of this is that it gives us, there's a translation. He made a translation of this from the original German, and it has no bearing on reality. So this is the translation he gives us. This is what he's telling us it means. Oh, this little child, so innocent, meek, and mild, was born here on angel's wings. See how he smiles and how he beguiles, all gathered round this holy ground, damp and cold, hours old, but behold, his face filled with heavenly joy, this little boy gives charity and clarity to life. Should others even feel my joy by half, from delight they'd surely laugh. Yes, yes, they would surely laugh. Ha 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 ha, they would surely laugh. Should another feel my joy by half, they surely would laugh. And if you listen to the actual one, you will listen to it, you can sort of fit those English words into how the German sounds. So it's like if somebody played some German for you and you didn't speak a word of German and asked you, what does this mean? This is kind of like what you might make up. So the opening melody is this, oh, die Zimmerdank, da-da-dum-dum-da, ya-da-da. And if you look at the English text, oh, this little child, so innocent, meek and mild, was born. So you can actually follow the English text sort of with the German text. So again, it sort of sounds like it could mean this stuff, but it doesn't. So let's listen to a little bit of the German. Verse 2. Another thing that it has in common with Carmina Burana is Carmina Burana, if you know it well, has a lot of repetition where you get the same melody sort of over and over again. And they're basically verses, and this piece has the same thing. Each one of the carols has a separate set of verses, equally nonsensical for all of them. Great, let's go on. So the other sort of largish piece we're doing is by Morton Gould. called Serenade of Carols. This one actually uses real Christmas carols, which is very handy. Memorial Gould, again, also American, born 1913, I guess. And he had, in some ways, his biography is kind of like Gershwin's. His early career spends in New York doing a sort of really eclectic mix of kind of popular stuff and classical stuff. Wrote for Broadway, wrote for film, conducted a lot, played piano. But the main thing that he's known for now is his sort of adaptations and arrangements of familiar tunes, so especially sort of Americana, lots of patriotic music. He wrote a piece called Stephen Foster Gallery that's based on all sorts of Stephen Foster songs. But what's interesting about him is that he isn't content to just sort of write the melody and put this neat little accompaniment underneath it. He has to mess with it a lot. That's basically what he does. And to the degree that it's almost not always easy to recognize the tune when you hear it. So I'm going to play a piece of his, a different piece of his, and then eventually you'll probably figure out what it's supposed to be, but it'll take a second. This is a melody you won't know. Light bulbs?
Our state thing that matter.
Those little rhythmic deformations, it becomes pretty obvious near the middle there. But even that opening thing, yon, dee da, oh, say can you, it's the same notes, but it's just so fragmented and so, with such rhythmic changes to it that it's not necessarily obvious. You get a nice early, by the dawn, early light right at the beginning as well. Now listen one more time.
I like to play that game.
So whenever he does these arrangements, not all the time, sometimes it's more than others, but he tends to do these sort of intricate sort of, probably just to keep his mind interested in things like that. It's not enough, again, to just write the tune. He wants to do cool things with it. And in Serenade of Carols, he definitely does lots of cool things with it. So for that reason, we need to play a game. And so you should all have paper and pencil.
Hey Grant, we got Christmas candy for a prize.
Okay, there it is. Mostly, if you win, I'll just be really impressed. So, as I say, sometimes the carols, in Serenade of Carols, you'll hear the whole thing. It's very obvious, very sort of straightforward statement. Other times they get fragmented and messed with and lots of imitation, where they're sort of overlapping on top of each other. So in order to hear all that, it's going to help if we can just hear all the carols first. So there are 14 of them, and I'll play each one of them for you. And I want you to tell me what they are. I will go in what I think is the order from least obscure to most obscure. So I think most of you will know the first few. I'll be really surprised if everybody knows all 14. So here it is, here's number one. If this were a real oral skills class, I'd play it twice, but I don't think you need it. Number 3. You all doing well so far? No, count on. Number 4.
Does that
Okay, number 5. Where's number 5? Number 5. There it is. Number 6. Number 7. Number 8. Number 9. recording of it by Julie Andrews. Number 11, only 4 to go. Number 11. Number 12. Number 12. And number 13. And last but not least, number 14.
You just made those last 4 up.
No, I've heard the tune for 13 somewhere.
So who's really smart? Anybody get all 14?
Have they always in that minor key?
I did not change the mode for any of them, so I don't think so.
Am I cheating?
So, yeah, okay, yes, that's We Three Kings, so Lori guitar. We look at the, this one, number 2. God rest you, merry gentlemen, absolutely. Number 3. Yes, what child is this? Or originally a folk song called Greensleeves. Yes, in its sacred version. What child is this? This one. Everybody knows the first 5 words.
You know the first
Yeah, the
one.
holly and the ivy. Right?
That's right.
Number 5. Where's number 5? Number 5. Number 5. There it is. What's that one? Lulu, it's often called what?
Coventry Care?
The Coventry Carol, absolutely. Coventry Carol. Number 6. Yes, the Wassail song.
Yeah.
Here we come, the Wassail. Next one. Here's where things start to get interesting, I think. We're about halfway through now. But it's still pretty big. Patapan, absolutely. It's called Patapan. It involves people playing instruments and things like that, flutes and drums. Number 8. This is a simple one.
Boar's Head Carol.
The Boar's Head Carol, yes,
It's a Oompa Loompa Christmas carol.
you are bringing the Boar's Head as the greatest delicacy that you can bring to children.
They're bringing boars.
Number 9. This is about where I start having no idea what they are. Sorry. Anyone have that one? Yes, it's My Dancing Day. It's what it's called.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit strange because it's a first-person carol. It has the word I in all the place, but you are Jesus when you sing that. You're talking about tomorrow will be my dancing day, as in this is the day when I will be born of the Virgin and I will come take flesh and things like that. So it's sort of emphasizing the bodiliness of Jesus when he's born. Next, this is the Julie Andrews one. Anybody?
Doesn't sound like Glory
Something Spanish.
It's actually something Irish.
Okay.
Its name is the Irish Carol. So if you want to look it up, that's where you can find it. And the Irishness comes in with these little, what they call this snap lombardic rhythm. I guess we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here at this point. Number 11. Anybody? It's called the Carol of Service, and it's from, its most famous version is from the Oxford Book of Carols. If you've ever sung carols in a choir, you've dealt with that book. But it's about, first line is like, up your neighbors, like, get up and do stuff, basically. What's next? Number 12. Number 12. Getting mostly blank stares here. That one's called The Babe of Bethlehem. It's actually a medieval carol, so it's very, very old. Number 13, what was number 15? Oh, this one. Not Mother Mary. It's all about Jesus, yes. It's a traditional Czech carol. Actually, it's called the Rocking Carol. And it's, what's that? Maybe, I guess I'd have to listen again. But the most distinctive line in it is where they say, "We will rock you, rock you, rock you." And it's really hard to sort of keep it together. Different rocking. And then there's this last guy. Anybody? I'd be stunned. It's called Come Love We Got. I'm actually going to play a version of it. This is another old one. And what you'll hear actually is that it's sort of hard to distinguish what the melody and what the accompaniment is. It's a sort of chorale-like thing. So the first verse that you hear actually won't have that melody that I just played. The melody doesn't come until the second.
Hey Grant, what's the title again?
Come Love We God. And it's difficult to find because there are a lot of settings of that with different melodies.
Come, love we God of might is most, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. Regnam Dei Omnipotens, the which made man both more and less, and create him to his likeness. O quanta sunt pecumina.
Here's where you hear the melody that I played.
The workmen came with their offering for to present that pretty thing. Cum summa reverencia, they gave their gifts that child until they were received with goodwill. Quam grata sunt ecunilla.
So now that you know all of those melodies, we're going to put them in a blender and do various strange things to them. So what strange things will we do? Well, first of all, I don't know if this is an iconic thing for you, but in lots of Christmas music, they have this sort of bell-like motive, which kind of goes like this. I don't know if that's familiar. Sometimes you get that in a lot of orchestral music, that sort of interlocking bell-like motive. And again, Gould has never wanted to do things the easy way. So at the very beginning of this piece, you will hear that in the harp very slowly. Like that. But that's not enough. What we're also going to do is we're going to take all four of those notes, play them at the same time. Those are good notes. We're going to transpose that down to here. And that's going to be our first chord. Here it is. I'm going to spread it out over the harp register. So again, this is him playing sort of a compositional game with himself, right? It's not something you'll necessarily notice right off the bat, but he's taking this motive, putting it in all in one instrument, and then turning the melody into its own accompaniment. So every chord that we get is these sorts of. So again, this is our top note. Then we come down to here, do it in a different place. Then a different place. Then a different place. So it's sort of this kind of three-dimensional thing, where we have the melody happening and we have the harmony happening. They're actually the same notes, if that makes sense. Again, this is something that you don't do if you're just jotting off a quick method, right? This is something you're doing. I'm sure you all remember the tune of Babe of Bethlehem, but I'll play it for you one more time. And the B section goes like this. So how do we start Serenade of Carols? We don't start with the whole tune. We get this little accompaniment that goes like this. We've taken that fragment of Babe of Bethlehem, turned it into our introduction. We're not going to actually hear that whole melody for a couple of minutes. We're going to go right into this We Three Kings. But again, it's like the Star Spangled Banner. We've taken a fragment of a tune, we've turned it into our sort of introduction accompaniment. It's going to keep happening throughout We Three Kings. As we're listening of We Three Kings, we're getting this sort of preview of Babe of Bethlehem, which is going to come on just a little bit. So this is movement one. Let's hear some of it. And again, what you'll hear very softly are the bells. And you'll hear this fragment of Babe of Bethlehem, and then in about 9 bars, we'll get We Three Kings. Hear those harp chords. And here's We Three Kings. We're still getting that accompaniment from Babe of Bethlehem. Get the bells again. Right, so if you want to describe that, you say it's sort of the dominant carol from that opening section is We Three Kings. But again, it's got this sort of underlying Babe of Bethlehem that's going along through it, along with those bells. And it's just sort of turned into this sort of jumble, right? Now we're going to get Babe of Bethlehem in its full statement. Bass clarinet, what's it called? So if you like that melody, good, because now you're going to hear it 4 times, all overlapping with each other. And it turns into this sort of giant wash of sound as we play this carol one after another. start in the middle. Here's Babe of Bethlehem. That accompaniment never really leaves us. Yeah, so it's sort of like, he can't ever just write the tune, right? If he's gonna write the tune, he's gonna write somebody else playing the tune a beat later and just sort of mess it up, right? Or he's gonna take these individual fragments and repeat them. So this is him sort of using familiar melodies to sort of stretch his compositional muscles in that way. Now you all remember this one, I hope. The next thing that happens in that carol is this. And then this. Or something, depending on the words are. It's a very repetitive carol. There's not a lot to work with. So if you're Morton Gould, and you've got this melody that just repeats every 4 bars, how are you going to turn this into something interesting? Well, his method is to take another kind of musical form that also repeats tunes every 4 bars, and that's a fugue. So, do we all know what fugues are in this room? Anybody want to impress the crowd with their knowledge? Billy. Yes, it's a glorified round, basically. So where you have the same melody, somebody plays it, they keep playing, and somebody else comes in with the same melody, and somebody else comes in with the same melody, just like that. So again, we've got this very repetitive melody. All that's going to change is that when people enter, they're going to play it in different keys. So for the second movement, you'll hear one trumpet play the tune, you'll hear another trumpet play the tune in a different key. We'll take a break from Boar's Head for a while, and we'll hear some Pat-a-Pan and the Carol of Service, stated in full, which is kind of nice. And then we come back to the real fugue, where we get Boar's Head Carol and Boar's Head Carol and Boar's Head Carol on top of Boar's Head Carol over and over and over again from our horns and our trumpets. So here's movement 2, starting with our Boar's Head Carol. Different key. Little intro. Now we're going to go into Pat-a-Pan and Carol of Service. And this is about fifes, so it's in the piccolo. There's some little decoration to the tune, but we do get the entire tune each time. Here's your Carol of Service. Again, stated in full each time. Here's the Boar's Head Carol in fugue. First entrance, second entrance, third, north. Gloria for some reason. This is called the episode. This is part of the theme where you don't actually get the theme of the tune. Now we're going to do it again. Second inch. Third. Fourth. Now we're going to go back to hearing the Carol of Syrinx again in their full forms. Ending with Pat. So movement 3 is where we get some of our slower carols. It's where we get the Come Lovely God. It's sort of open to this big chorale. And we'll get some Holly and the Ivy and Coventry Carol. Relatively straightforward setting of those. One thing I should point out when you see this performed is that you'll notice our strings are singing in a different arrangement than they usually are. And that's because they're actually divided into 2 string sections. To my left will be, it's actually quartet number 2. They're all muted. And to my right with the basses is quartet number 1. And they play completely different music. They never really played together. And so sometimes one of the small things that Will does is he'll have, like at the end of the first movement, yum, bumpy, yum, bumpy, so even if it's the same tune, it'll get passed back and forth between the 2 different string choirs. And you can really hear the sound difference when they're doing that. We'll listen to a bit of the last movement. This one starts with the Irish Carol. In a very kind of celebratory version. And again, you'll get the same thing. You'll hear accompanimental muted strings for a few bars, and then you'll hear the louder, more energetic strings for a few bars answering them. Then what do we do in that one? We do Dance, Good Rest of Merry Gentlemen, which turns into My Dancing Day. And then we end with a little Love and Joy Come to You and to You Good Christmas Too and all of that at the end. Fortunately, these are mostly, not fortunately, they're a little bit easier to follow since they happen sort of in full chunks, kind of like Pat Pan does, except for the wassail song. You never hear the beginning of the wassail song. So we never hear, we just get the Love and Joy part. So I guess they figured that part's been taken care of about the previous 14 minutes or so. So here's the final movements. Again, the introduction is pulled from one of the carols. So it's this fanfare based on the Irish Carol before we actually get the Irish Carol in full. Coming away from that one, then we'll go right into God Rest You, Merry Gentlemen. And again, it's happening in canon, right? We're hearing one person enter, and then another person enter, and then another person enter, so it's all overlapping. Same melody with different rhythm. Now for Dancing Day, we'll basically hear the melody as is, but again, it'll be passed from instrument to instrument. One bar. Bassoons, horns, back. Now trumpets, oboes, trumpets. And we'll end with a little wassail. Well, thanks, guys. I hope I'll see you on Sunday. If you have questions.
You said something about having a quartet on each side of you, so are you saying that the orchestra members will be set up?
Right. We won't actually use quartets. We'll use all of our strings. But basically, there are 9 string. You don't need to hear it again. So there are 5 regular string parts: violin 1, violin 2, viola, cello, bass. And then there are 4 muted string parts, which are completely separate from that: violin 3 and 4, viola 2, cello 2. And so the first 5 parts are to my right. So they're set up violin 1, violin 2, viola, cello, bass, I guess, on one side. And then on this side, it's violin 3, violin 4, viola 2, cello 2. And that's because, again, they're playing very different music. Again, these guys are muted, these are not. So we want to sort of separate them to make the difference between them as obvious as possible. But yes, there'll be a very obvious difference after intermission when they come back not to where they used to be sitting.
How to work out for the winds this country.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this Gould is, very heavily, especially woodwind dependent. The bassoon part is in the stratosphere, it's in treble clef for a lot of it, which is very rare. It's usually in bass or tenor. But yeah, huge wind solos throughout. And the Rouse is sort of more brass heavy, the Gould is more woodwind heavy, I would say.
The percussion are happy.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they're happy, but they have plenty to do with the Rouse. There's actually, it's for 2 sets of brass cymbals playing at the same time, things like that. It's noisy, kind of like Bermuda. The Gould does not have percussion. So, a serenade is often thought of as this sort of smaller, more intimate work. And I think you can hear that, right? It's not blowing you out of the water with volume. A serenade is literally, buonasera, good evening. Serenade is music that you sing in the evening, right? And so it's evening music, you don't want to wake people up.
Thank you. Thanks.
I can't resist, sorry, I've gone into a strange place mentally. What's a soiree?
Party.
Yes, what does it mean literally? Bonsoir? Evening party, right? So what's a matinee? Matinee means, technically means morning, right? So we are going to have a matinee on Sunday where we play a serenade, okay? Don't judge us too harshly.
I know you left out rocking around the Christmas tree.
Right.